In progress with Michael Neel on Play It Forward. Michael, thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Michael, you are filmmaker, director, animator, and we're going to be talking about Jasper Tales, which is a really cute project that you've been doing. Would you like to intro it or yourself prior to starting?
Sure. So I've been doing film for over 20 years. I went to Vassar College to get a film degree in 99. And I've just been doing indie films. I love everything. I love horror as my specialty and my passion, but I'll do pretty much anything. I freelance documentaries, horror, whatever someone will pay me for. And with Jasper Tales, so my son, when he was 4, he's 10 now, which I can't believe.
Hear
I
that?
was hanging out with him in the living room one day, and he asked me to tell him a story. And I was like, I was kind of fried, like, well, will you tell me a story? And I wrote it down, and it was the craziest thing. Because like 4-year-olds have like, their creativity is just what it is. It's not impeded by anything, conscious. They just word out this stuff. So I was like, oh, this is funny. And I told one of my business partners, Greg Anson, who's another animator I've worked with on Infinite Santa 8000, which is like a sci-fi animated web series and movie we did. Um, and I was joking. He said, well, when are you going to make it? I was like, oh, I guess I could actually animate it. So I had him record his voice, and then I had another artist do some like childlike art and then animate it exactly to what he said. And that's kind of when I realized the formula. Like it was very charming and it was just a bunch of things coming together well. But what I realized is if you animate or film exactly what he says, that's the magic. Like if you try to make it like a grown up would see it and explain things, like it doesn't it doesn't hold up. So we did a couple of those, one when he was 4.5, one when he was 5.5, two when he was 5.5, I think. And then we took a break and did one when he was 7, I believe. And that was a live action one. And they've been super fun. They're a lot of work. I mean, animation's tedious, but
Yeah.
it's really it's a good project and it's fun to do with my family too. Like my dad does music, one of my best friends does art. It's a real family kind of thing.
Yeah, and it shows, and it's a really cool, cute thing to be able to do with your child and your, other family friends. And it's, the two episodes that I saw, or the two films that I saw was Great Scary Christmas Day and the Toilet-tastic Adventure of Karate Chop. And, Piff, I try to get deep here, and I'm watching these movies and I'm like, okay, there's really something here. And so I look forward to talking to you about that. And we'll just segue right into the first question, which is, in your kind of psyche, your emotional inner landscape, as far as you can kind of dive into that germinal seed that said to you, all right, I'm going to make a movie about my son talking about Santa, a dead version of Santa giving brains to the kids. Like, yeah, that will be good. Like, what there kind of sparked that?
What's really funny is like, so I'm a horror filmmaker and we have horror stuff all over the house, posters, toys, t-shirts and stuff. And at the time, of course, he wasn't allowed to see these things,
Huh.
the movies, but he's just around it. And I always said, if something's too scary, I'll take it down or whatever. It never bothered him. But when the first two that we did were horror, and then for Scary Christmas Day, I was like, well, we should do a Christmas one. And I'd imagine he'd do this sweet thing, Santa Claus and all that. And that's what he said. And at first I was like, okay, that's cool. How about another one? And he did one that was prompted and it wasn't very good. So for me, I guess I quickly realized that this is kind of like when kids tell stories, it's like they're filtering, their imagination into the world. And and that was one where I was like, all right, let's just go with it. And I got someone to do the voice of Santa Claus, which was great. And that was actually a good example of what I said earlier about following the child's story, like literally. There's a part when Jasper says, and then he made a lot of presents that had brains, referring to zombie Santa, who already vomited blood on the tree, which I couldn't believe he came up with. Um, but I was thinking, all right, so maybe Santa has a bag, so we'll draw a bag and he'll replace presents and stuff. And I started to animate it, and it's adding like 10 seconds. And part of the charm is that these things just kind of move, like a kid would tell it. And then I was like, wait a minute, I'm overthinking this. Go back to this basic idea. Like he made presents that had brains. Well, what can you do? I was like, I don't know. Santa has magic. So he just does some magic and stars come out and they turn into brains. And it's like, oh, okay, this is it's easier because it's less art and animation. But it's just, if I was making that, I probably would have spent the time to have him with his bag, taking out presents and all that. But the thing I like about these, aside from being a family project, is it's just a reminder that, you know, creativity is, you know, it's easy to overcomplicate it. Creativity kind of exists for its own benefit. It's like a friend of mine who's a filmmaker says, you know, he loves independent films because they break the rules, because there are no rules. And it's a great mindset to be in. So that's, for me, that's one of the things I really cherish and love about that one in particular. That one has had a great response from people. It's really funny. It's ridiculous. And actually, the guy who does the voice of Infinite Santa, which is the poster right there, did the voice of that zombie Santa Claus as a favor. Um,
It's
so,
cool. Yeah, no, it's cute. Very well done. I definitely appreciate kind of reminds me of something Keats talked about as an artist, and his term for it was negative capability. And it's kind of like launching into this space, this headspace where you're not thinking about how to construct the art construct or the art object, but the art object is just being channeled as raw as possible through the individual. And you know using a child and the child's imagination to kind of jump into your own, okay, blank slate of how something can come across is a great exercise. What I saw is I really, after watching those two, the Karate Chop and the Santa, Scary Christmas Day, I saw a theme starting to emerge between these two. And I said, okay, there's something actually here. And I also have a child. I got a 3-year-old kid. And so I in the, parent kind of role and experience. And so I'm like saying, well, wait, there's something going on here with these two. So I wonder if you reflect on these two films, do you see a theme or a message in them that you can reflect on?
that's a really interesting question because for me, they've always just been pure creativity, trying to capture my son as almost like a moment in time. Um, I'm not really sure. I guess I hadn't really thought about it. For me, it's like knowing him. It's a treat to watch those because it's like, oh, that's who he was at that age.
Mm,
It's like he was into zombies at 4.5. He was into ninjas at 7. He
mhm,
had
mhm.
a Halloween costume, a ninja costume that he just wanted to put on and run around. Um, I don't know, actually. I'd actually like to put it back to you. What did you see?
I'll tell you. I mean, so one of the things, about the show is that I asked the first question, kind of the inspiration, kind of where I want you to focus in and find that piece. And then, it's the message. It's
Mhm.
like there's as artists, I believe, no matter what you create, whatever it is, however abstract it might be, there's something in there that is a narrative. There's some, especially in film, there's a narrative structure to it. And no matter what you do, there's something that is being relayed, and we communicate in messages. So, and a lot of filmmakers and artists, you want the audience to appreciate your art and find the meaning in itself. And rather than saying, well, I was intending this, and, but there is this reflective thing that we go through as artists. We create an art piece, and then we want to maybe explore something that's not, fully ripe. And then we do it, and then in the process we shape it, and then we look back on it, and then we say, oh, okay. So there's that whole kind of personal experience to creating the object, and then the object may do whatever, it may disintegrate. And so reflecting on the movies, I'll answer the question. As a parent, um and as a former child, as an inner child, having still the child within, right, that we all do, um just different roles. There's a real theme that emerged between socialization, being socialized, the process of socialization, and often the violence that comes along with socialization. And so in the Christmas Santa story, you have like this, hey, let's just, blow up the traditional cute story of Santa and make it the alter universe. And, the kids are bummed out, right? They're not happy about getting brains. They wanted their little, toys and tots. So they're a little depressed, saddened by it. So there's a tension. There's something there that's going on. But then when we fast forward it and we, 3 years later and we're at the toilet tastic, now all of a sudden we're in potty land, right? And potty training and post potty training, and we're putting the toilet back in the box, right? That's the whole kind of thing with that. And the socialization and our roles as parents, and to me, it was just like screamed like, whoa, as we grow up and mature, we face these, roles that we have to go to school. We can't, take off our pants and potty on the, chair or whatever. We have to follow these conforming rules. And naturally, there's nothing necessarily, there's a good bit of that that's very healthy, but in the process, there's some give and take often. So that was my takeaway from it was that tension and how do you navigate the tension between, our role as parents to socialize our children and teach them, how to integrate into society, yet maintain their authenticity, their joy de vivre, all those kinds of things. What do you think?
So that's interesting you say that because that was made in the height of his obsession with Captain Underpants, which
Okay.
is, are you familiar with that? Your son might be a little, or child might be a little too.
Yeah, I got a 3.5-year-old, so I've only in passing heard of this. I've not seen.
Okay. It's amazing. It's essentially like an anti-authoritarian punk rock style potty humor, really clever stuff that parents and kids can really get into. Two troublemakers, basically, that are always fighting the system, for lack of a better term, and also some of like the best potty humor you've ever seen, like Simpsons level, like just
Right.
creativity.
Yeah.
So I never really thought about it like that, but I think he was obsessed with that part of it, like playing pranks and that sort of thing. And I think that was definitely part of it. That was also made in the early days of the pandemic, so I think it was like him. You know, I mean, I think there was like a month in or so. So I think it was him just trying to have some creative outlet. I don't know if it's necessarily more than that, but I think creating something different and exciting, was cool to him. And we hadn't done a Jasper Tales in a few years. That's actually part of the Roger Corman challenge. I don't know if you were aware of that. So Roger Corman, for anyone that doesn't know, was like a legendary independent producer and filmmaker. B movies, stuff like that. Um, and he said that he wanted a challenge for people to make a movie during the pandemic with everybody at home. Obviously, no one was leaving the house, without using any pro gear. So, like shooting on our phone, that didn't even have a tripod. It was just like put it on a chair or a log or something. Um, but that DIY spirit, I think, really helped it because, like, my wife is an art teacher and an artist. She just made this like toilet off of tag board or a cardboard or something. I don't remember. We had a box lying around. So like he wrote all these things that we could do. He wrote that there were guards. I happened to have a night helmet from another film that I had to stop, and we had random costumes in the basement, and we just kind of did all this stuff. And I think kids pick up on the idea that they're in this society they can't change. So their imagination and their attitude is the way to do it because no one can really stop them, you know? So it is interesting to hear that. And and like I said too, just to see where he was, that like the other Jasper Tales were recorded on a professional studio microphone. This one was on my phone up in the guest bedroom that has like a rug and a bunch of soft like materials, so it wouldn't have an echo. You know, um, so anyway, yeah, I guess that's maybe, I don't know if that's a bit of a long-winded answer to what you said, but that kind of got my brain going a little bit. I hadn't really thought about that before.
Yeah. Cool. Cool. That's the goal. Just get the brain working.
Yeah.
um and I think it's really cool. I'll just add like that it's a, if I even reflect further and, what I said, there's that family component that you guys are doing this creative thing together and going through the social, growth in a way that parents, mom, dad are supporting the child.
Yeah,
So, lastly, Michael, since making these films, how have you changed as a person?
that's a great question. Um, so after the first films, I think it reminded me that creativity is its own reward, and also that I've been making films for a long time. I've been writing more scripts recently, trying to get bigger projects done, and it's just a good motivation, to get something out, because like a big feature script or even a smaller film takes forever. These things, animation takes a while, but it's not that long. You can do it in a few weeks. Um, and when this happened, I was in the middle of making a film, an adaptation of a Lovecraft story that had never been done before. And then the pandemic happened, and we were just over halfway through. So this was like the first creative thing I'd done, since then. And Jasper, my son, is actually in the movie. So he was already getting more into the film world anyway. I cast him in it for one, because it was good for the part. Two, he's free and he's adorable. So, it made it easy. Um, yeah, since then, I mean, when we got back into our film, it's called Celophaeus, after the, vaccines were out and, late, mid 2021, I guess like May or April. I guess I just felt like, um, not a desperation, but like just a very clear motivation that like, these are films that I need to finish, that film in particular, and then other things coming up, just like, you know, getting back on the horse a bit with regards to motivation and energy. It's easy to get in that mode of just going from day to day and trying to survive indoors until we can do other stuff. So that was a good motivation. um it just reminds me about creativity. Like, one of the things I still love about my son is like, I have stream of consciousness thoughts all the time. I'm always kind of writing stories, and he lets me tell them to him, just in random everyday life. And it resonates. Like, sometimes you're just like, oh yeah, whatever. But usually he's 10, he still wants to be creative and he wants the collaboration and attention. And, so I think if anything, it's reminded me to stay on like a creative path that is kind of true to who I am. Like, my goals have always been to make horror movies or other genres, but mostly horror. Um, and I freelance so I can do that. I haven't taken a steady job at a production house or gone on a very specific corporate ladder on like a Hollywood film, a director of photography or something. That's all been intentional, because it lets me do these indie films, and it's not always easy, but having that renewed focus on this stuff that really matters, I think is really valuable. So, yeah, I guess that's pretty much kind of where I'm at. I mean,
Pretty
one thing
good.
I did notice with our Lovecraft film was everyone came back with a sense of urgency. Like, and you can see it in some of the performances. Like, some of the material gets dark, and just in a normal narrative flow. Not like depressing dark where you want to like, I don't know, go out and think about the meaning of life for a while afterwards. But that we hadn't filmed a lot of the dark stuff yet, and when we did, it seemed like a more immediate understanding of what this feeling is. So, I guess bringing that whole experience plus the creative element, and just pushing forward with that, and just trying to make an honest film, and then hopefully have people respond to it and make another one.
That's awesome. Michael Neel, filmmaker, director, animator. Thank you for being on the show, keeping it true.
You're so welcome. This was awesome.
Cool, man. All right, till next time, everybody, play it forward. Peace.